Welcome. I finally saw The Green Knight. I have been looking forward to watching this movie for a while now, and I finally got to see it the other day, and it was everything I expected. This movie is amazing. This is cinema. It's not 100% because that would mean anybody can enjoy it, but that's not the case with The Green Knight. It's not for everybody, but this is cinema. This is why you go to movies, to be transported, to be bewildered, to leave the theater thinking about what you've just seen. The Green Knight, this latest iteration of the epic Arthurian poem, is directed by David Lowery, who is known for The Ghost Story, A Ghost Story, which is an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend this movie, which also has a great soundtrack, a song that I play all the time. I forget what it's called, but anyway, yeah, check out A Ghost Story if you haven't seen it. It is moving. It is amazing. He also did Pete's Dragon, a story about a green dragon, which is okay, and it was more of a commercial, kind of like a popcorn movie, but it had a lot of substance. It wasn't a bad movie at all, but it was a pretty forgettable movie. But A Ghost Story is amazing. But even with Pete's Dragon, you could still see David Lowery's prowess, like that. This is a good filmmaker, but this is his best project yet. GAWAIN and The Green Knight is his best movie yet. I also find it interesting that he picked this project because it's not very popular. A lot of people who saw the trailers and were anticipating this movie probably never heard of it and maybe did some research afterwards because there's only been two other iterations of the epic poem. And one of them, the very first one, stars Sean Connery, and I think Terry Gilliam had something to do with it. I've seen that movie. It's corny as hell, but it's old. It's very fantastic and very 80s, very neon and shiny and big hair. And Sean Connery looks crazy. Looks like a crazy person. The makeup doesn't look good at all. It doesn't look good. And after that, there's also a 1991 BBC TV movie, which was pretty good. Pretty dull because I find the aesthetics of a lot of TV movies are pretty dull, like the cinematography. So it's pretty dull, but it does capture the essence of the time, and it tells a version of the story of the Arthurian poem very well. It does a great job of interpreting it. So it's like a one-to-one telling of the Arthurian legend. So regarding the earlier movies, the first two movies I mentioned, those are very accurate to the poem, but this movie, this new David Lowery movie is special, and it is the best of all of them. Like, this is the Gawain and Green Knight story movie interpretation that will last forever, or however you want to see it. It is the best interpretation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Even though it is not an accurate interpretation of the Arthurian poem, which is excellent, which is why anyone should want to make or adapt any story, right? Something that has been done before. This is the only reason, so you can do something different with it, not just because you want to do something different, but because you have something to say, or you see avenues to tell a great story based on an adaptation or something that's been done several times. And this version, for me now, is the definitive version, even though it is not accurate to the Arthurian poem whatsoever. But as a movie, it is amazing. It is amazing because of all the places David Lowery takes you that the poem doesn't even touch on. But it makes sense that all these things happen and can happen and could have happened within in that time when the poem was written. So David Lowery takes some creative liberties, and they mostly work. But ultimately, this is like, I'm still thinking about the movie because it's just so effective. And spoiler alert, if you've seen it, you know how it ends on a very ambiguous note, which is not how the poem ends, right? So this is why I really love this movie. I'm going to get into all that a little more as the video progresses, but this is why I really love this version of the movie, and I believe this is the definitive version of the epic Arthurian poem. It is so imaginative, and it goes places. It goes beyond the poem. It goes beyond the poem. That's why this movie is amazing. That's why it's the best adaptation of the poem. A brief summary of what the Green Knight is about. So, a mysterious knight, the Green Knight, shows up at Arthur's court, King Arthur's court, and the Knights of the Round Table during Christmas, at Christmas. And he challenges the court to a battle, to a game, I guess. And so, of course, during those days, honor was a big thing. So, refusing would not look good. You would lose face. And so, Gawain, being an unproven knight in the epic poem, in the Arthurian poem, he's already a knight. Being unproven, decides to take this Green Knight, this mysterious Green Knight, up on his challenge. And instead of the Green Knight fighting, instead of there being some kind of a battle, the Green Knight just kneels and allows Gawain to chop off his head. After which he promptly picks up his head and demands that Gawain meet him in 1 year's time, Christmas, so he can return the blow. So Gawain's journey to meet up with the knight, the Green Knight, the following Christmas is all about testing Gawain, his courage as a knight, right? To test whether his desires to becoming a good knight match up with his courage, and a bunch of other tests. I believe they're like 5 points, which is why there's a lot of imagery of a 5-pointed star in the movie. There are 5 things that a knight upholds, that makes them a knight. I think it's like chivalry, piety, courage, and fellowship. So along Gawain's journey, he's tested on all these different concepts. According to the poem and the earlier movies, the one starring Sean Connery and the 1991 BBC movie, when Gawain finally meets up with the Green Knight at Christmas, the Green Knight raises his axe and is about to lop off Gawain's head, but stops short because that was part of the test. And since Gawain doesn't flinch, shows courage, the Green Knight, reveals who he really is, and he just happens to be one of the lords, a lord that Gawain met on his journey, right? So the Green Knight lets him go, and everything and all is well. But according to this movie, and another reason why I really love this movie, and I really love what David Laurie did with it, and it was just so effective, is that as Gawain is about to get his head lopped off in this new movie, Gawain flinches. And the Green Knight says so, and so there's a lot of fear in Gawain. So he clearly isn't a courageous, chivalrous knight whatsoever. He's a weakling, and he's cowardly. So as that happens, Gawain, flinches and eventually runs away. And from that point, right? So according to the poem, according to the earlier movies, the story is already ended. Right, Gawain is let go by the Green Knight. We find out who the Green Knight really is, and all is well in the world. It ends on a great note. Gawain is a courageous, chivalrous knight. But in this movie, so Gawain flinches and runs away. This is when the movie really began for me. This is when I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And that's when I really, really dug in. Like the first hour and whatever that was going on, I was okay. This is cool because I've already seen a bunch of movies about this story, right? A bunch of adaptations. So, and they all follow the same beat. So watching this and seeing that happen, I was like, oh my god! So I was like really, really tuned in then and ready to see where David Laurie was taking me, and it was amazing. So Gawain runs away, and he runs back home, back to Camelot, and we see him get coronated, celebrated for his courage, and everybody knows he's the guy who killed the Green Knight, whatever, even though it's all a lie because he ran away in this movie, and he inherits the kingdom, and in this movie, Gawain had a peasant girlfriend he was in love with, but now that he's going to be king, he doesn't marry her. She has a kid with him. But he pays her like one would a prostitute, and takes the kid away from her, and that's the end of their relationship. And it's very heartbreaking because they really loved each other. None of this was in the earlier adaptations of the movies, or nor was it in the Arthurian poem. All right, so this is once again David Lowery doing some interesting stuff here. So we see that, he inherits the kingdom. He has a bastard child, right? And he sends that kid off to war. That kid gets killed, and instead, yeah, Gawain marries a noble woman instead of the peasant woman that he really loved, right? Another very, very cowardly thing to do, right? So he's just Gawain is a massive piece of shit in this iteration of not a massive piece of shit. He's just a normal guy, I guess. Just a regular selfish, self-interested guy, right? So his bastard son dies. He loses the love of his life. He's compromised his soul. He marries a noble woman, and his kingdom falls to ruin. And once again, for anybody who knows the Arthurian poem, so Gawain and the Green Knight, this is all just new content. So it's really great. This is how you adapt something. You bring something new to the table that's interesting and intriguing. And it's not a far stretch from the original text, because as I mentioned earlier on in the video, you could see everything that David Lowery did in this movie. You could possibly see it happening, right? If you thought about it, if you gave it a little more thought with regard to the Arthurian poem or the earlier movies, you could really be like, okay, yeah, you could see these things happening. But we didn't see that with those movies. But David Lowery brought it to us. This other aspect of things that are going on in this world, or could happen in this world, the possibilities. So we see Camelot fall, right? Very sad, very heartbreaking, and we see Gawain lose his head, right? And then we're transported back to the meeting with the Green Knight. This was amazing. This was amazing, and I think this I don't know David Lowery. I don't know how he came up with the idea or what prompted him to make this movie, but I believe, because as a writer, I write a bunch of stuff, make a bunch of stuff that no one will ever see, because I hate my stuff. I don't think it's good enough. But anybody who's creative, when you get an idea and it's amazing, and you use that idea, and that's like kind of like the genesis of everything that happens in the project. And I believe this was the point that David Lowery was like, hey, I'm going to make this movie because I have something interesting and different to say that hasn't been said regarding this poem in this movie. And as I said, this was the point. This vision of a parallel universe of what would happen if Gawain ran away and did not uphold his end of the bargain, right? So we're transported back to the meeting with the Green Knight, and Sir Gawain says, hey, wait up, I'm not ready. Takes off this green sash that was given to him by the wife of the Lord I mentioned earlier, who turns out to be the Green Knight in the earlier movies, not in this movie, or he's not even mentioned at all in this movie. He takes it off because that green sash is supposed to protect him from all kinds of harm, all harm, whatever. And then he says, I'm ready. Then the Green Knight says, yes, you're a very brave knight. Amazing. Now, off with your head. Boom. Credits. Because I was looking forward to this movie to see what they were going to do. I was like, okay, it would have been interesting if it looked as beautiful as it does, and it was just a one-to-one adaptation of the Arthurian poem. But it was so much more. This is amazing. Like, hats off David Lowery. This was just so much more, so open-ended, so thought-provoking, right? So I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. This is why I love movies. This stuff is inspiring. This reminds me of when I watched The Wailing. If you haven't seen The Wailing, go and watch that movie. It's a Korean horror movie. It is unbelievable. So for those of you out there who wants to know what happens after the credits roll, or if the Green Knight chopped off Sir Gawain's head or not. So in the poem, I think I've mentioned this before, in the poem he doesn't lop off his head, and in the earlier movies as well he doesn't. But this is such a great adaptation that maybe he does lop off Sir Gawain's head. Maybe he does chop it off in this version, in this iteration of this adaptation of the story, because the work has been done. We've been given so much. We've seen what happens if Sir Gawain did not fulfill his end of the bargain. We've seen Gawain's journey, whether he failed in this adaptation. He definitely failed all the trials on his journey to meet up with the Green Knight. So we've seen enough. We've seen everything. And if you know anything about the Arthurian poem and the earlier movies, you've gotten everything you needed. And as the journey of a human being, of a knight in that time, he's achieved his goal. Even if he failed everything on his journey up until that moment when he reflects and has that vision of his possible future, his cowardly future, if he flinched and did not fulfill his end of the bargain, that was enough to redeem him. That was enough, because can you imagine just kneeling there waiting for someone to walk over and just take your head off? Like, you have to have a lot of balls, so that was his journey has been realized. He is courageous. He is worthy of being a knight, even if the Green Knight does chop his head off. That is the great thing that's been achieved by this movie. It's like any of the possibilities work now. All the possibilities work, even though we don't get to see it. And I especially like that we don't get to see what happens, because if you know the story, it's like David Lowery was sparing anybody who already knows the story, right? It's like, okay, I've done enough. I've done my work here is done. I've said what I wanted to say about this, about my version of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And it was great. This is how you adapt a project. This is how you adapt a book, how you adapt anything. You bring something new to it, not just for the sake of bringing something new, but genuinely contributing to the text. Yes, that's exactly it. That's why I love this movie. It contributes to the Arthurian poem. It makes it better. It makes it richer. It builds out more of a world. It does a way better job than the other movies, of course, and you could say that's, no question there, because those movies are pretty old. But that being said, this movie just gives you so much more with regard to that epic Arthurian. Something else that's really interesting about David Lowery's adaptation of The Green Knight is that, according to the Arthurian prose, the Arthurian poem, and the earlier movies, it wasn't Morgan Le Fay, Gawain's mother, who summoned the Green Knight. The Green Knight just showed up. And I've heard a lot of people, talk about how it's ambiguous. Like, why did this all happen? Why did the Green Knight show up? Why did Gawain accept his offer to play the game? Why didn't he just say no? Why did Arthur and the court indulge this Green Knight? So there's a lot of whys. And the same thing could be asked with regard to David Lowery's version of the movie. Why did Morgan Le Fay summon the Green Knight? And a good argument is that, given that she's seen that his son is a cool kid, is okay, he's not a special kid, but he spends most of his time in the brothels. In the beginning of the movie, she asks where he's been, and he lies that he's been in church, but we saw him banging his love, the prostitute. He was in a brothel. So you could say his mother and her witch friends, her coven, summoned the Green Knight in order to strengthen her son, in order to help her son reach his full potential. This is something else that David Lowery brought to the table, brought to the adaptation, because it is very ambiguous. It is very, there's no reason why the Green Knight shows up according to the original poem. The Green Knight just shows up out of nowhere. And from a movie making perspective, this is a massive plot hole. Like, what's going on here? So in David Lowery's version, his adaptation, a lot of these questions are answered, but also open up room for criticism or, potential plot holes, because it is never actually confirmed that his mother, Morgan Le Fay, summoned the Green Knight to help bring out the courage and the best in her son. It's never solidly said to the audience, right? We don't know. Like the Green Knight just shows up and we holding the same letter that his mother was writing with her coven. So we know that she brought him. So but what is great about this is, as I said, it's something new. David Lowery brought something new to the table once again with regard to the story, trying to explain the things that happen, you know, because yeah, in the other movies, Morgan Le Fay rarely plays a role in the movie. Like she's hardly ever seen, or I don't think she's even in the Sean Connery movie. I didn't even see her in the 1991 British adaptation, British TV movie. So once again, not just adapting it word for word, but bringing something new, bringing some kind of a meaningful interpretation, not just something that's whimsical, not just something that the director wanted to do just because he felt like, I think this will fit here. No, he was trying to bring meaning to the events that happened in the ancient Arthurian poem. So as Sir Gawain embarks on his journey, he comes across a lot of different obstacles, and one of them is he comes upon a lord and his wife. In this movie, that wife looks exactly, she's played by the same actor, the lady who I can't remember her name, but she plays Lara Croft in the recent Tomb Raider movie. So that lady is Sir Gawain's peasant love interest in this movie. She is also the same character, not the same character, but that same actor plays the lady of the house that Sir Gawain comes upon while upon his journey. So she is the wife of the lord of the house that Sir Gawain is welcomed into. And that lord, which is played amazingly by, I really like Joel Edgerton in this movie. Joel Edgerton and that character is actually the physical, so the human manifestation of the Green Knight. But we don't, I think it's kind of hinted in this adaptation, but we know that for sure in the Arthurian poem and in the earlier adaptations of that poem with Sean Connery and the other movie. But so, and it was just brilliant seeing this because it was David Lowery setting us up for the test, because the test that Sir Gawain is being put through at that moment while he's in the Lord and the temptress, the lady, the wife of the Lord, while he's at their house, they're, enjoying their hospitality. The test that Sir Gawain is undergoing there is chastity, right? A sexual temptation. And in the prose and in the early adaptations of the poem, he passes that test. He doesn't succumb to his lustful ways, but not in this movie. Not in this movie. And I thought that was amazing. I thought that was really great. So there's just a lot of meaningful choices that David Lowery makes. So in this movie, he completely fails and he totally jizzes everywhere. And so the point I'm trying to make is the girl who tempts him, the lady who tempts him, is also played by the actress who plays his peasant love interest, which visually justifies why Sir Gawain would fall for her, right? As an audience member, you're eased into that problem way better because you see that she's the same person, right? So but they're clearly not the same person, and Sir Gawain doesn't see them as the same person, doesn't recognize her, doesn't treat her like his peasant girl, like he doesn't know who she is. She's a different person in this context, but she looks exactly like his lover. So as an audience member, this is easing us into what happens next, where Gawain fails the test, because why wouldn't he have sex with this woman or fall for this woman? She is exactly his lover. She's the woman he loves, right? So that feeds into the temptation, and hence that's why he failed that temptation, because he couldn't refuse his girl. So that's like a visual thing, not exactly what happens in the context of the movie. In the reality of the movie, she's a different person, but from a meta perspective, looking at the movie, this is filmmaking genius. This is David Lowery making a decision, right? She's making a decision to reinforce the points that he is making, the changes that he has made to the Arthurian poem, right? Because as I said in the poem, he doesn't give in to the lust. In the earlier movies, he doesn't give in to the lust, but here he does. So, in order to make that work, in order to justify the change that he has made, David Lowery casts the same actress in the role of the Temptress. Genius. Amazing. I've also really enjoyed the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight because it's a King Arthur adjacent epic, right? It's a story that takes place after all the glory and honor has been won, the greatest glory, which is the story of King Arthur and how he created Camelot or saved Camelot and made it this amazing, legendary country, city, world, whatever. Because what can one do in a world where, or in a kingdom where there, the knights of the Round Table, we're talking about what's his name? What's King Arthur's right hand? I can't remember his name, but anyway, all these knights and King Arthur himself have undergone these epic journeys, these great stories that no one can match, right? So what legend, what honor, what glory is left for the other knights, for the new knights like Sir Gawain, right? So that's why I really like the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, because it sits perfectly right beside all the stories of or the major story of King Arthur, right? It's a perfect fit. It's not some kind of epic where Sir Gawain is trying to show the world how chivalrous he is by going on some great epic battle or starting some kind of war to prove himself. No, it's a much quieter story, but it is just as impactful, and it's just a perfect fit. As I said, like, what other battles can there be fought when the greatest battles have been fought? What glory is there to seek if the greatest glories have already been sought, right? So Gawain and the Green Knight is a perfect addition to that tale, the King Arthur saga. So if you're interested, it's pretty easy to track down the Sean Connery version of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and the 1991 TV movie, which is way better than the Sean Connery movie. But if you're really interested, because I was looking forward to this movie, I just consumed a whole bunch of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight media. So if you're like me and you want to go back to this world, it's very easy to track down both of these movies. Actually, the 1991 BBC movie is right here on YouTube, so you can definitely check that out anytime you want. So have you seen The Green Knight? And if you have seen it, I really want to know what you thought about it. I want to talk about this movie. This is what happens when I watch something that I find to be great or very interesting. I think about it. I want to talk about it, just like all of you out there. So this is a great place to do that. Please let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about The Green Knight. For those of you who liked it, or those of you who are interested in it, I encourage everybody to go see it. This is a great experience. Also, I want that to happen so that the movie makes all its money back. It was only $15 million with regard to a budget. So that's small change compared to what movies cost to make these days. So I'm not worried about it bombing. The critic scores are amazing. I think it's like 86 on Rotten Tomatoes and like 80 something, 87 on Metacritic, 84 Metacritic, 89 Rotten Tomatoes. So hopefully that encourages people to go see it. And if you have, let me know what you thought about it, and help a brother out. I'm almost at 50 subscribers. Yeah, man, we're getting big, too big to handle. So if you want to support a brother, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so you know when next I drop a video, and I'll check you out on the next one. Peace out.